Angie, tell us a little bit about your background, where you were born and raised.
I'm a proud Buckeye, now living in North Carolina and Florida. But I'm from the state of Ohio, and background-wise, I've always been a very social person. Always loved to be around people, but never loved racing. My dad loved racing. My mom loved racing, more drag racing. But I knew who Richard Petty was just because my dad had the hat. And I was so embarrassed by it. He'd wear it in the garage every weekend working on his car. But I grew up playing soccer, doing kind of girly things, having slumber parties, whatever. I went to Capital University in Columbus, Ohio, and I just had a love for broadcasting. And originally I wanted to be like the reporter on Dateline or something, and then had some things happen in my life where I was doing more serious reporting, and something happened to me where I was a microphone and a camera was thrown in my face over a personal issue I didn't want to talk about. And I think from that day I realized I didn't want to be the Dateline reporter anymore. I didn't want to be intrusive in people's lives anymore. And I got into sports because I thought, that's fun. Or maybe I could do travel or fashion or something, but I still wanted to speak in front of people, and just kind of accidentally got into sports. And then didn't really get the TV job, got radio first, fell in love with radio, and worked in pop radio. So I dealt with a lot of music bands, had a great mentor, Dave Robbins. He's still with the CBS group of radio now. And I did helicopter traffic reporting, I did morning show, I did, the assistant to the program director. And then an event came up. And I had some event experience because I was trained with Dave, and my boss at the time said, don't you have some event experience? We've got this NASCAR event coming into town. And I'm like, oh my, are you freaking kidding me? NASCAR? I'm like, why couldn't it be Ohio State football or hockey or, something cool? And he's like, listen, these guys are coming into town. They're going to run. It was like when you go to the short tracks and they would have the 4 Sprint Cup guys that show up and race against each other to raise money. So I called my brother-in-law, who loved NASCAR. This is when you set VCRs to record the race, and you couldn't watch anything else, and we would all get so pissed off because every Sunday he had to record the NASCAR race, and you couldn't change the channel. Next thing you know, I call him up, and I'm like, you need to help me with this NASCAR event. Well, he, stars in his eyes. He thinks it's really cool. And so I had a Chevy driver at a Ford dealership. And when they told me that they said, we can't sign autographs here, I'm like, well, do you want your money? Just get down and start signing. I don't care about what. Had just no clue about the sport. Lost a bet, went to Michigan for my first Sprint Cup race.
What kind of bet?
I said, if you win your little race tonight, you know how the drivers are. They're flirty with girls.
And what driver might we talking about?
Oh, we had Jerry Nadeau was there. Chad and Donna Little. Fell in love with Donna Little. She was so much fun. Sterling Marlin, and who was the other driver that I had there? Was it Schrader? They were all making fun of me because I could care two what's about them. And so they're like, you need to come watch a race. Why do you disrespect us so much? I mean, they were offended and I was like, I really don't care. But my brother-in-law said, if you can get a hot pass to a race, you are taking me to a race, girl. and I said, whatever, all right, because I love my brother-in-law, and I lived with them growing up, so I definitely needed to help him out. So I think I might have made a bet with, I can't remember if it was Chad or who it was. And so, if you win the race, then I'll come to Michigan, whatever. And then so they probably staged it. You know how they are when they all goofing off and in those late model cars. So I went to Michigan, and it really opened up my eyes, and I realized that this was a really awesome sport full of amazing characters and people. And it was weird. It's like I walked in the garage, and all these people were so nice and so giving and caring, and they wanted to teach me about the sport, and I just thought it was the coolest thing ever. And then I figured out, I might be able to make money off of this. I mean, people are kind of into NASCAR. This was late 90s when the sport was just ridiculously going crazy. And nobody ever, NASCAR wasn't on the FM dial, so the Motor Racing Network, PRN, they were all on these little AM stations that if you listened to the NASCAR race on radio, it was like, and Jeff Gordon to lead, and you couldn't really quite hear anything. So I went to my boss, Dave Robbins, and at the time I was in sales, and we were giving away spots on Sundays. And I said, why don't we add NASCAR to an FM dial, to a country music station. It's the same demographic. We could make money off of this. And really, I just wanted to be able to go to the races. I wanted an excuse.
So how did it go from such a bad thought about NASCAR to one race and you were hooked?
Yeah, it was that easy. It was one race, and I thought, I think it was the people more than anything else.
Or did you already see Mike Skinner and you had your eye on
Oh,
him?
that came later. That is actually a really funny story because I kind of shunned him off for a while because he was scary. I mean, Aaron, come on. Remember?
Aww.
Dale Earnhardt and Mike Skinner were kind of like the...
I know what you're saying.
Yeah, you know what I mean? Like, they were intimidating. I mean, no joke. Dale Earnhardt was the intimidator, and Mike Skinner as well. And it was so funny because I didn't really want to talk to him, and somebody had said something like, you and Skinner need to meet. And apparently, you'll have to ask him. He can tell you the story. Apparently, he had an eye for me. And I'm like, oh, he's scary. Like, he's beer crushing on the head. You know, not my style of guy scary. And my boss one day, we got NASCAR on the FM dial, and it became huge. It was like a big hit. And it's so funny because now I work for Motor Racing Network, and I remember negotiating a deal with David Hyatt at that time, and they were so excited because they were going to be on a big FM station in Ohio. And then we ended up getting into Chicago and all this really cool market. But my boss one time said, hey, you got to get this interview with Mike Skinner. It was in '99. He's leading the points. And I was so cocky. I'm like, no problem. He's got an eye for me. So I can get that interview. Don't worry about it. And when I got the interview, his handler at the time said, well, you'll have to come to the motor coach to get the interview. And I went, yeah, I don't go to motor coaches. I've never been in the driver owner lot. I work in the garage. Yeah, I'm trying to be all professional, serious woman in the garage. And then I'm like, well, then you don't get the interview. So I was like, okay, well, now that I ran my mouth,
Like, all right,
I've got to go. So I had a girlfriend with me, and I looked at her and I said, you're coming with me because I'm not going in alone. And so she's all like, ooh, okay. And I think she was kind of flirting with another driver at the time, so she was all about going in the driver owner lot, you know, trying to make him jealous, I guess. I don't know. And so we walked in, and this sounds really silly. I know it does, but I honestly, in my heart, I'm telling you the truth. When I walked in and we made eye contact, I was like, I'm going to marry that man. Like, that's him. That's my soulmate. It was like this calming feeling, and he was so nice and so charming. And I'd never been in a motor coach. And he was designing buses for this company at the time called Overland. And so he was showing me, here's my design, here's what I did. And I look over and he had a wine rack. I'm like, oh my God, you drink wine? Like, you have class? I mean, I'm thinking, stereotypical, terrible me. My fault. And I just thought he was the sweetest guy ever. So, of course, he nails the interview. He does it in one take. You know, I have him do liners. He's like, so are you done with me? And I'm like, yes, thank you so much. And now I'm trying to be nice. Like, okay, maybe you'll ask me out on a date now. And then he looked at my friend. He's like, so would you like a glass of wine later? And I was like, oh, snap. Like, he just dogged me. And so he knew what he was doing the whole time. And it burned me up. I remember driving to my hotel that night, and I called my mom. And I said, you know, I am such a biatch. And he goes, what do you mean? And I'm like, because that guy is really nice. And she goes, well, I tried to tell you that. I had her for her 60th birthday at the Las Vegas race. And I remember she was talking to Mike over top the haulers. We were watching qualifying, and she's leaning over, and I'm like, Mike, I said, Mom, that's embarrassing. Don't talk to the drivers. I'm supposed to be working, and you're like talking to the drivers. She said, well, he's a nice man, and he was complimenting your coat, and I told him I bought it for you for Christmas. And, you know, and I said, okay, Mom, but let's not, don't make me look silly here. And so when I called her, she goes, well, I already know who you're talking about. And I go, what? She goes, you're talking about that Mike Skinner man, that nice man tried to talk to me in Las Vegas. It was funny. So long story short, I'd never seen a truck race. He invited us. This is in Martinsville.
Did your friend go and have wine?
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
yeah. Thankfully, nothing
work out.
happened. I think a little smooching, but I was like, oh, please, dear God, please, nothing happened, because this will be really awkward. Like, I don't want to lose a friend over this, but this guy, like, I'm just being honest. So she said, well, Mike invited us to watch the truck race. You know, he was the first champion. And I'm like, okay, game on. All right, let's go watch the truck race. So we go watch the truck race. Our first meal together was a Martinsville hot dog, very romantic.
Hey.
To this day, we still have one every time we go. And so we're sitting up there watching the race. I'm asking questions about the series because I didn't really know a whole lot about it. And he jumped off the hauler to go underneath and talk to Richard Childress or something because they were getting ready to practice following the race. And I don't know why I did it, but I followed him down there. I'm thinking, why did I do that? Yeah.
Wow.
So I just kind of followed him down there, and he kind of grabbed me, and it's funny because I had been married before, and he had been married before, and he's like, so I was told you were still married. I'm like, no, I'm not still married. And he was like, okay. And I go, well, what's your deal? And he's like, oh, I've been separated for 2 years. I've had a serious girlfriend. He kind of starts telling me his situation, and then the friend walks in that he had invited, and we were like, we're not talking. We're not doing anything bad. And it was almost like from that moment on, we were pretty connected. The next morning, well, this is bad. He did take her to see his son race, and you know how superstitious racers are. His son won the race at Caraway. So I thought, well, I'm screwed, because now he thinks that she's good luck.
She's got to be there every race.
Exactly. So that kind of had me a little worried. But the next morning, we're having coffee. I did have to go pick her up at his bus. Not proud of that one. But I did peek in the bus, and she was sleeping on the couch in one of his T-shirts, but she had a pair of leggings on. So I was like, ooh, okay, this is not, this is not too bad. So I went, I knock on the door. He offers me a cup of coffee, and from that moment on, I think he drove me into the garage, and we talked. He about missed the driver's meeting. Larry McReynolds was having a heart attack, but he and I are just like, you know how you are when you first, meet the one. And he said, call me sometime. I'm like, oh, no. If you're interested, here's my business card. Give me a call. And I think like 2 minutes after the race had ended, he finished in the top 5, and he had called and left me a message.
Aww.
I know. I was like, oh, okay, he's so sweet. I think it only took about 6 to 8 weeks after that, and I was moving down to North Carolina. I was already moving to North Carolina to work in the industry. In Charlotte, though. And Mike lived in Greensboro, and he's not a Charlotte boy. So he said, can I talk you into maybe coming to Greensboro instead? And I'm like, you know what? I'm young, and if it doesn't work out, I only have an hour to go to where I was going to begin with. So let's try it. Thank God it worked. It was like 15 years ago now.
So what is it like to be a driver's wife and live that lifestyle?
Well, Mike and I, we always had a lot of fun with it. I mean, definitely lots of ups and downs because of the sport, but I think it makes you a better couple or a closer couple. I will say that there's a pet peeve of mine, and this is something that I never did. And I know this is something that you never did either. You were always with Ray when you guys were racing, or Ray was with you when you were racing. But Mike and I made a pact when we got together that if it's not fun anymore, we're out, because life's too short to not have fun. And we have so many people come up to us and go, you guys are always so happy, you're having fun, you're living life. I'm like, because we live with that philosophy that I know if I start acting like crap or he's not having fun anymore, he can easily find somebody else. And same thing, with me. And so on the racing circuit, it was always very important to be at the track. I never wanted to not be at the track with Mike. And it wasn't because I was insecure or I felt that, he might find somebody else at the track. It was because I wanted to be supportive. They risk their life we kind of take it too lightly sometimes, how dangerous this sport is. Yes, NASCAR has made tremendous leaps and bounds towards safety, but still it's a dangerous sport. And even if there was a practice going on, qualifying, especially the race, I never left that racetrack, always at the racetrack. I mean, why wouldn't you be? You're in these beautiful motor coaches. It's not like it's, you know what I mean? And so I've never understood why some wives, it's almost like, okay, I've got my catch, and now I'm going to stay home in my beautiful mansion in North Carolina. Well, go ahead and race, honey, and have fun, and I'll be here on Sunday when you get home. Or sometimes people just fly in on Sunday. And we never had young children at the track, so I understand that's a little bit of a hard balance. But I've always admired Kim Burton because she figured a way to make it work.
You seem to always have balanced a career of your own and still traveled with Mike and supported him. How hard was that to do?
It was very easy for me because Mike was supportive. He understood that I always wanted, if I bought him a gift, I wanted to be from money that I earned. I wanted to pay my own school loan off. I mean, when we met, he would get so mad, I can pay your school loan off. This is ridiculous. You're paying like 7% interest. And I'm like, but I put myself through school. It's a sense of pride. And I've always been the type of person that I have to have a goal of my own. It was great that he had his goals to win races and championships, but I also had goals that I wanted to achieve. And a lot of times it might have been, okay, I want to write a book. or I want to do a little freelance work here, do something in broadcasting. We started the foundation. That became a goal of mine and a passion of mine. But it was easy because he was supportive of it. And I mean, everybody says, oh, it's so stressful, the NASCAR circuit. Oh, come on. It's fun. It's great. Yes, it's stressful if you're with a team that's not doing well and you're struggling. Yes, that part of it is stressful. But if you have your health and you're in love and you're having fun, it's a pretty cool life. I'm not going to sit here and act like I'm so worried all the time, because I love getting on that pit box and watching him race. I mean, it's a rush. It's fun.
Now, you guys had a celebratory victory lane moment that you did every time. How did that come about?
Oh gosh, that came about just because Mike and I have always been kind of silly, and we're very affectionate, lovey-dovey. And so at the house, I would usually be like, hey, and I'd run up and jump on him and wrap my legs around him and give him a big kiss, and it was just kind of like our funny little thing. Well, when he won that race in Daytona, it was 2001, the qualifying race for the 500. I was just so excited, really wasn't even thinking about anything, because we were in our home track, all of our friends were there, and it was just the emotions. It was such a thrilling victory between him and Dale Jr., so I'm like, that was so cool. I wasn't even thinking, so I just jumped on him, gave him a big kiss. Well, the next morning, the newspaper, came out with the big giant photo of me with my legs wrapped around my husband in victory lane. I mean, we're a little proper in NASCAR sometimes, and I think people took it like, whoa. And I'll never forget, because unfortunately, the last time I spoke with Dale Earnhardt was about that picture in the newspaper. And it was during driver intros for the Daytona 500, and I got that big grasp on my shoulder, and I'm like, oh my God, I'm in trouble. Because some people thought it was funny, but his sponsor was Lowe's at the time, and they're a little conservative. So Dale Sr. said, come here, I want to talk to you. And I thought, oh God, okay, here, take my beating. And he gave me a hug, and he whispered in my ear, and he said, that was really cool what you did to Skinner when he won the race. And I'm like, really? You didn't get mad about that one? And he said, hell no. He said, I wish more people would show emotion like that. Every time that boy wins, you better do that, okay? I was like, yes, sir. And then we lost Dale, so I kept my word, of course, yes.
Every win you did it. You managed a lot of Mike's sponsor negotiations, or at least that's what I believe you did. And obviously you're right by his side. So what was it like to go through the highs and lows of racing with Mike? The losing the sponsors, the teams, all of that.
That part is stressful, I will say, because I don't like to be told no. I think my husband's the greatest man in the world. And so you get a lot more no's than you get yeses in sales. And so sometimes Mike, I would work all day, and he would be out with his buds playing golf or doing his own business ventures. And then in the evening, we're kind of wanting to relax, and he wants to start then talking about, well, who'd you call today? What'd they say? And I'd be like, God, I just want to be off now. But you're never off in racing, and you know that. I mean, it's 24/7. You just got to be available whenever that phone call comes. But the thing that hurt me the worst was to tell him, well, so-and-so said no. They don't like this about you, or they don't like that about you. And that is harsh. That is harsh, because I want to be supportive of my husband, but then I'd have to put the business manager hat on and say, I'm sorry, they just don't like you. They don't like you. They don't want to be involved with you. And a lot of times I just wouldn't tell him about a lot of those no's, which would sometimes lead into a little bit of an argument like, well, what are you doing all day?
Yeah.
And then I'd finally get mad. I'm like, well, let me tell you what I've been doing all day. This person and that person. But Mike was easy to manage because he believed in taking care of sponsors and people. So it's not like I had to beg and plead with him to be nice to people or to stop and sign an autograph, because that's just his nature. He does that anyway. The thing that I think is the worst are the backstabbers in the sport. Every sport has them. I'm not saying that NASCAR is the only one, but you think Mike and I, our biggest fault, too loyal. Way too loyal to too many people in the sport. We believed that if we were told, hey, when you get done racing, you'll have a job with this company because you were with us from the ground up. I mean, and I don't want to badmouth anybody, but I mean, when Toyota first came into the sport, that's the bill of goods they sold to Mike Skinner. Of course, that manager's no longer with the company. Things change. And our fault was if someone told us something, Mike's like, if I shake your hand, I'm a man of my word, and by God, I'm going to do it if I want to do it or not. And that's how he trained me to be. And so, we picked up and left Florida and bought this place here in North Carolina thinking we'd live here for the rest of our life or until we got too old to take care of it. And that, when Mike hung up the steering wheel, he would have a position in management or just something in the sport. And when that day came, it was just as quick as, sorry about your luck. We don't have anything for you. And that hurts. That hurts. That hurts when you do a ton of work for a race team or for a car owner, especially in the truck series. The Sprint Cup series, they've got a lot more people in manager positions. But when you are trying to help a truck series team, and Randy Moss Motorsports was a prime example of that, because we came in, they needed saved, and we needed saved the year that we got together. They didn't have a lot of budget to run, payroll wasn't being met, and Bill Davis Racing, good friend of ours, Bill and Gail Davis, but they were done. They were done with the racing side, and they got an out. They got someone to purchase everything. But along with that went our sponsorship from Toyota at the time for the truck. And I will say that Toyota was very good to Mike because they said, listen, if you can find a ride, we'll help support the motors. We'll do anything we can so you can race this season. But, that's what happens. Of course, that happened on Christmas Day. And then we got hooked up with Randy Moss Motorsports and David Dollar. And it was a great season, 2009. I mean, we barely made ends meet. When he won the race in Kansas, I think the payroll was down to like under $100,000 for the whole race shop. And all of a sudden, because we won that race, you got the bonus money from Toyota. And we were like, yes, we can keep going. This is awesome, And so that was like so thrilling. And we got so close to that team. And then we brought in the good sponsorship. International Trucks saw what Eric Phillips and Mike Skinner was doing on track, and they're like, hey, we want to get involved in that. And Exide said, we want to continue to get involved, and we had a couple other sponsorships. So then when we actually had the money to go racing, the backstabbing started. So it's like when you struggle, everybody's together, and then when you have it made, everybody wants to point fingers. This was your fault. You didn't do this. You didn't do that. And I think that's the biggest struggle for everybody in racing. I mean, even if, I always say, even sometimes if you're at Hendrick Motorsports, right? I mean, Casey Kane is struggling right now on the track. Great driver. We know that he can win races. It has to be hard to see all his teammates in the chase already, and he's going, what the hell is going on? This should not be happening to me. So you're a really good person if you can figure out a way to emotionally keep it together and move forward. It's always easy at the wedding. It's at the divorce when things start getting really ugly.
Was that what led to Mike's retirement, or was there a combination of things that kind of?
Yes. Well, there's two things. In 2007, Mike and I had this, probably sitting in the hot tub drinking a bottle of Altamira wine. We came up with this cool idea. He was having this crazy year in 2007. He turned 50. He was like, I'll probably retire when I'm 50. And I'm like, you've won 5 races, you have 11 poles, and you're probably going to win the championship this year. And he goes, yeah, but how cool would it be if I win the championship and then I get up on the stage and go, peace out, guys, it was fun. I won my first championship and I won my last. And what a great story, especially from where Mike came from. But the wheel fell off, strangely, at Homestead, and we didn't win the championship. But they were doing well. So, of course, a racer wants to keep going, and we had the sponsorship. 2009 then was a great season because we started with Randy Moss Motorsports, but 2010 was disastrous. I mean, Mike had figured out a way to take a truck that was probably a 15th place truck, very underfunded, and finish in the top 10, but you're not getting into victory lane. And so the following season was supposed to be his final. It was the 3rd year of a 3-year contract, and Mike goes, okay, this will be it, so we need to make the best of it. And we're trying to build a team, bring Jeff Hensley back. He was ready to come back as a crew chief. We had internationals still, and unfortunately the backstabbing started, and things just didn't work out. And I think David Dollar was in over his head financially a little bit, and we didn't agree with that because we wanted those sponsor dollars to go towards that truck. and we knew that there was money there to race properly, and the virus started spreading in the race shop. And so we just all decided, we sat down, that it was best just to go on and part ways. And so that's what we did. We all sat down and figured out a way to, okay, here's what we'll pay you to leave and keep your mouth shut for 2 years, and while we finish racing with the sponsors that you acquired. A little stressful, a little frustration, a little hate, a little angry, got to be honest about that. But it's weird because then I got the job with SiriusXM Speedway, and then I started working. So it's always been, for Mike and I now, at the time it sucked, but I think it made our marriage stronger, it made our relationship stronger, and if we were ever put in a situation again like that, we would know how to handle it better now.
How hard was it for you to watch Mike make the final decision to retire from something he absolutely loves?
It was, there was a few tears shed privately, I'll be honest with you, because it was so much fun. I mean, it was a rush for me to be on the pit box and just see him go around that racetrack. And he got an opportunity to run a truck for Eddie Sharp in 2012 at Daytona. And I thought, oh my gosh, if he wins this race tonight, we can hang up the helmet. That would be such a cool finale. And he was doing so well, and I'm thinking, he's playing with them out there. This is awesome. I mean, this truck is really cool, and we wanted him to do something really great for Eddie Sharp because we've always loved Eddie. And then he got wrecked by his teammates. And I was like, damn, I hate this sport. You go from like, yes, to, crap. And then after that, I admired Mike because he helped out Bob Germain and did a little bit of, I hate the word start and park, but was trying to help them do some research and development. He got to do some testing for Toyota, which he absolutely loved that. He was developing stuff for Michael Waltrip Racing. And so that, I think, kept his heart happy, that he could still get behind the wheel a little bit. But then he looked at me one day and he goes, you know what, it's no fun to not be competitive. I've won races, I've worked with some of the best in the business, and I've won a championship and championships and other series. And he said, why do this? And the thing that really got me, and this was weird because it was last season, because you're always still thinking, well, if somebody comes up with that $3 million and wants to go truck racing, we might do it if we could put Jeff Hensley back to him together. You always have those dreams together. But when Dale Jr. took himself out of the race car last year because he had a concussion, Mike was listening to it on the radio. And he called me, and he goes, so have you heard about Dale Jr.? And I go, yeah, I'm reading about it now. I can't believe this. This is, big. And he goes, yeah, I don't need to be in a race car. This is crazy. I don't need to hurt myself in these start and parks and these cars that are really not, he goes, not that they're not safe, but not up to the standards that I would normally have put myself into. And he said, so Dale Jr. making that decision kind of triggered Mike to think like, I've had a lot of bad hard hits in my life, and I'm lucky to still be here because he has had some tremendous hits. And we've had multiple meetings with neurosurgeons where like Dr. Charles Branch, who always worked with Dale Earnhardt Sr. as well. And when they look at your brain scans and go, okay, I can't tell you how many more hits you can take. You've got to know in your heart how many hits you think you can take, but always know that one could be it. And you could walk around, with affected speech. Your walk could be affected. You might not be able to function. I don't know. But I'm letting you know right now that you've taken a lot of beatings and your brain scan does not look good. And so when he told me that, I'm like, okay. And it was weird because I had this like sense of calm, like, if he's fine with it, then I'm fine with it.
Do you think it was easier or harder that the retirement didn't happen in 2007, like if he won that
way
championship? Harder that it was dragged out?
Yeah, way harder. Because you dream in NASCAR. Everybody dreams. I mean, you sit around and you think about how cool would it be in Victory Lane at Daytona to do this or have this photo or be able to thank all your friends and know that you finally got to end it the way that you wanted to end it. But the reality is that doesn't happen for very many people at all. Like maybe 0.5% of drivers get that opportunity to end it on their terms the way that they want to end it. But it was a lot harder because you think you have a plan and then it's taken from you. And it's taken from you because you didn't do anything wrong. It's taken from you because of jealousy or egos or people lying about you behind your back after you've been so loyal and you've worked so hard. That's what hurts more than anything else. Being too loyal. And I hate to say that because I want to be a good, loyal friend and family member, but sometimes in the business world and in NASCAR, you need to do what's best for you. And I think we learned that lesson the hard way. And I try to preach that to other people so they don't experience what we went through. And I'll tell you, the hardest thing, not just hanging up the steering wheel, because I think Mike in his 50s was still winning races and getting poles, and like that's pretty impressive for someone in their 50s, especially this day and age in our sport. But the hardest thing is that once you're done, out of sight, out of mind, that's no joke. I mean, like we're talking 1 week out of sight, out of mind. And nobody cares anymore. I remember one day, and I mean, I usually even still get teary-eyed when I think about this. Mike looked at me and he goes, it's like I'm an old bull that they just put out to pasture. You know, and he goes, and I did so much for the sport, and I tried to help so many people with the sanctioning body, with my teams, with my manufacturers, and they're like, hey, here's a t-shirt. You know what I mean? Here you go.
Yeah.
And that, I think that hurt more than anything else.
Was that something you didn't expect?
Yeah, I didn't expect it. I really thought more people would have something for him to do in the sport. After spending over 30 years in the sport, I really felt that somebody would have something for him to do. And now things are starting to open up. I read an article Marty Smith wrote with ESPN that Dale Jarrett and Rusty Wallace even went through depression. And I'm like, and I ran home to Mike. I'm like, even Rusty and Dale, and they had TV jobs waiting for them, but they even went through this terrible time of depression. Dick Trickle, before he passed away, I had the opportunity to interview him, and he told me it took him 3 years to get over his depression. And I think he still struggled to the day he died. I think that's maybe something that led up, and it can really tear you apart. And I remember I would try to keep Mike up, and I would say, well, it's not going to happen in 30 days. Give it a year. You know, but that year is hard.
Goes by slow.
Yeah, it went by really slow. Absolutely. But this year, things are starting to open up a little bit. I still feel that some of our retired drivers have more to offer to the sport when they're done, and unfortunately, they don't get the opportunity to do that.
You mentioned that you went back to radio with Sirius Speedway. Was that a hard transition for you to go back and be working full-time and Mike not be racing full-time?
Well, it was because when I signed up, he was supposed to run that damn season that we talked about that we ended up not getting to run. So originally it was like, this is so cool because I'll get to be working at the track with Mike on the track. This is going to be so much fun. I can't wait. And then all of a sudden it's like, oh no, now you're just going to work. And so at first, I'm not going to lie, my little Sprint Cup wife and truck life was pretty nice. I could start making dinner at 4:30, open up a bottle of wine, have appetizers and dessert ready, and girls want to have a long lunch? Yes, sure. And now it's like, I got to get to work, I'm sorry. But Mike, when we got together, we're 14 years difference. Or almost 14 to 15. And so he said, well, I'll take the first 10, and then you take the second 10 because you're so much younger than me. And I'm like, okay, whatever, I'm like, oh, damn, he was serious. Like, I really got to go back to work. This kind of sucks. But I have a fun job, and I enjoy my job, so it's not as bad. But I'm pouty some days. I'm not going to sit here and act like it's perfect because there are some days when Mike will look at me, and he's like, it's such a beautiful day. I'm going to play golf. And I'm like, I got to be back at 2, And then I ended up adding the responsibilities of helping to do sales and marketing for Ryan Newman. So now I'm working a ton of hours, but I think it'll pay off in the long run.
And do you still get to travel together when you...
Yes, which is nice. I have a lot of freedom between the positions that I have at Ryan Newman Motorsports and with SiriusXM Speedway. But the one thing I always say is that my husband comes first. So anytime I do an interview, I'm like, okay, listen, you probably won't like this about me, but I'm just going to let you know that Mike comes first, our happiness comes first. I will work my guts out for you, and if I don't deliver, then let me go. But if I deliver for you with the freedom that you allow me to have, where I can still travel and do things with my husband, then I'll do you a damn good job. But the day you don't like that anymore, just let me know, and we'll part ways and no hard feelings. But I learned that from being too loyal in the past in racing. And if I'm going to be loyal to anybody, it's going to be Mike Skinner.
Being on Sirius, you're obviously up to date with the current affairs of NASCAR. How do you feel the state of the sport is currently, and compare it to what it was like when Mike was maybe running in Cup?
Well, when Mike was running in Cup, that was like 97, 98, 99, 2000, the sport was ridiculously booming. I mean, I could call a company that built grills and have a Mike Skinner number 31 grill done in 10 days with this ridiculous contract. Video games. I mean, we were making really nice money on endorsements. And then when the economy kind of started to crash a little bit, a lot of those endorsements went down. Like you would go from getting good contracts from trading cards or different licensing, like hats and T-shirts, to where people are like, yeah, we don't build that anymore unless you're Jeff Gordon or Tony Stewart or Jimmy Johnson or something. Like only the people that sell get that kind of stuff. And you're like, well, damn, I'd like to have a Mike Skinner shirt. But that was just the reality of the sport. But I think everything is cyclical, so I never stressed out about it. I think that now we're back on an upward swing because I'm definitely noticing way more people at the racetrack. I'm noticing that trying to get into the racetrack, the traffic is getting backed up again, which is a good thing for the tracks, not for us. They have to go every week, but I think that that's nice for the sport. I think that NBC coming back, and then you've still got Fox, everybody's starting to promote heavily again, kind of like what happened in the late 90s and the early 2000s. I think that the new package is really exciting for the new race fan, maybe a younger race fan. You win and you're in the chase. It's maybe a little easier for the race fan that maybe halfway pays attention, kind of like the way I am with football. I don't really follow it, but sometimes I get into it, but I know just enough to get me in trouble. But we need to cater to those types of fans because not everybody knows the history of our sport. So I do think that we're on a nice little upward swing. I don't ever think we'll be back to that crazy boom of the late 90s because people are smart now. People know how to budget now.
Sponsorship has always been a challenge in the sport from the competitor side, and now working with Ryan, are you seeing that coming back a little bit too?
Well, up and down, up and down. I think sponsors are smart now and they want to see a return of investment, and if you can't deliver that, then they bow out. So activation is key for a sponsor. So anytime I try to get a sponsor, I constantly try to come up with some sort of activation where they will see a deliverable that they can measure. Because if they can't measure it, then you only keep them for maybe one season. But you want them to come back and grow and continue to spend more and more money. So it's weird with sponsors because it's really who you know, and I hate to say that, but I might meet somebody at a corporate dinner and they just happen to be a NASCAR fan. Then you get them to the race and they're like, oh my God, this is so cool, and everybody's so nice to them. Then it gears them up to want to get involved with the sport. Very rare that you just get a cold call from an agency that says, we have a client that's interested in NASCAR, can you give us the information? It used to be like that. But now you've got to work a little bit harder, I think, to find those relationships. And the thing, Kelly Earnhardt Miller and I were talking about this, it takes forever to groom them. It used to be that you could get something done sometimes in 60 days. Now it's like a year. And that's the hard thing, because sometimes Ryan would be like, well, how's the proposal with these people going? And I'm like, well, we're still talking. And he's like, what? I'm like, I'm telling you, I'm not lying. It just takes a long time. Like, because there's so many levels of approvals that people have to go through. People are they're tight with their money, and I don't blame them. I would be too.
Well, thank you very much, Angie, for your time, and I look forward to hearing all about your fun things in retirement.
Me too. I hope they're good. Hopefully you'll be with me on a few of them.